watching Notepad, and I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. The conversation that we shall have today is on education, and specifically private education. Do you get a feeling that a lot more Malaysians are now turning towards private education as a primary choice for their children? Those that are aspiring to send their kids to private education, is this the right way to go? Joining me today is the CEO of Real Education Group, Dr Goh Chee Leong, here to discuss this and more with us. Dr Goh, thanks again for spending your time with us. Congratulations on the appointment. I realize that you have just recently been appointed as the CEO of Real Education Group, very recently. But of course, the topic of education has always been central and integral towards what you've been doing over the past few decades.
Yes.
Not to out you and your age, though.
Yeah, about 20 years, you're right.
But let's talk about how the education process was before we can really delve into what it is right now.
Yeah.
Over the past 20 years, what has changed, in your opinion, from the education process in Malaysia? And I'm not just talking about any particular level, I'm talking about the education system outright.
Sure. Well, I mean, generally what's happened is that Malaysians have been more exposed to what you have all over the world, and we've seen that 30, 40 years ago already with tertiary education. So when you look at the privatisation of tertiary education, and 30, 40 years ago you had the Taylors and the Helps and the Sunways and the Intis all opened up, and more Malaysians were being exposed to different forms of education. So not just the Malaysian system of education, but you had the British and the Australian and the New Zealand all opened up, and then you had more Malaysians going overseas. And I think what you see now in the K-12 segment, so we call it K-12, from kindergarten to secondary school, is that flow down. And you see that cascading down because more Malaysians now are saying, because I'm sending my children to different systems at the tertiary level, why not expose them to different systems when they are younger? And so I think the privatization of education that you see becoming more apparent in the last 7, 8 years specifically is probably an artifact of that Malaysians are becoming more global and they are more exposed to the fact that there are different options, and I think they're exercising their right to choose options.
And I don't want to put you in a position where it's a bit difficult for you to defend, but do you think that there is also a lack of faith in the current education system resulting in parents and perhaps young adults trying to choose for a better option for themselves or for their children?
Well, I think certainly the challenges that the public education system is facing is well reported, I think parents now, given the fact that they have options that perhaps were not in existence 10, 20 years ago, I think you see therefore, that, like I say, exercising of choice, and when we were growing up, there wasn't any option, so it was not something that you talked about. But I think given the fact now that there are actually options available, merely magnifies the fact that there are, I think, some perceived challenges and weaknesses in the local education system.
Let's talk a little bit about the Real Education Group per se. It is part of the Paramount Education Group. The story that you guys carry is actually quite interesting. You start from kindergarten all the way to graduation, all the way to tertiary education, postgraduate as well. The part and parcel of the journey of a child that goes through this process, we really are entrusting you to take care of our kids throughout the entire education journey. Is it too much of a responsibility for a company, for a corporation to carry that kind of burden, the same kind of burden that we place upon the government through the education ministry?
Well, I think, it's interesting. So as you know, the Paramount Group has been around for a long time, and through KDU, that was, close to 40 years ago. And now with Real, Real, by the way, I should mention, is also about 30 years old. I mean, we started our Cheras campus in 1985. And so as you say, we've got schools, international and national, Cheras, Shah Alam and JB. We've got about 34 kindergartens. And we've got English centres as well. So I think combined with the 3 KDU schools and the KDU group, I believe all in all, we've got close to 30,000 students. But I think it's an interesting question because the way to answer it is companies that I think are serious and committed to education are comfortable with that kind of responsibility. I think what you're seeing though is over the last 10, 15, 20 years, starting in tertiary and now in the K-12 segment, a lot of people see it as a cash cow, and that's not true, by the way. I mean, it's incredibly difficult to actually run education, but I think a lot of players from other industries, so whether it's developers or manufacturers, sort of took their cue and they looked at players like KDU and Real and they thought to themselves, hey, look, this is easy money, you know, let's get into the business. But it's not true. You know, I think when players have come in recently, they've realized that, as you say, it's an incredibly heavy responsibility. I mean, it's not the same thing as selling houses or cars. I mean, you're talking about people and the future of young people. So for those of us who have been in education all this while, you know, and I've been in it for 20 years, I think we realize the tremendous weight of responsibility we carry in this business. But I think for those who choose to walk that path and who choose to take education seriously and not just look at it as a business but a responsibility, a calling, a mission, I think it's a huge weight. But I can tell you, and I mean, it's a tremendous industry to be in. I mean, I'm in it because you know, you just enjoy it. You know, the joy of seeing lives transform, seeing potential of young people realize. I mean, you know, how many other industries are there? You know, you think about that, you know.
The responsibility that you have
Yes.
in your position as CEO is also quite unique in the sense that not only do you have to ensure that the education process in Real Education Group be sustainable and of course withhold to the integrity. The conversation also is how to make it profitable or at least sustainable in the long term. Wearing these two different hats, do you feel that there would be compromises that you would have to make at the end of the road? Or do you think that this, because of you seeing both the perspective of running a commercial entity as well as ensuring that the syllabus and the education process is not going to be compromised, there is a good way for you to deliver what's best, not just for the shareholders of the company, but more importantly towards the parents of these children?
Yeah, no, you're right. I think it's about a balance, you know. I think it's about responsible balance. I mean, my former mentor used to tell me that, look, in the education business, money is oxygen, you know. So, I mean, we don't as human beings live to breathe, but you breathe to live. So I think that the prudent, intelligent, responsible management of money, as with any kind of resource, so I mean, you know, whether it's your buildings, your people, I think it's part of responsible management to enable the mission, which is education, you know. So I think we are very clear in the sense that our mission is not the money. But of course, you need the management of money. You need to, as you say, take care of the stakeholders' needs, you know, the shareholders' needs, so that you can continue your mission, which is actually educating people. So I think for 20 years, I've had the benefit of, I think, being mentored and coached by the best. And, you know, my current boss and chairman, Datuk Teo, is very clear about that. He always, when he talks to me, reminds me of the fact that he says, look, Chee Leong, I mean, don't forget our mission is education. You know, our mission and vision it's not the money. It's about, you know, ensuring that these young people, we educate them in a meaningful way so that they can succeed in life. But the management of these funds and the balancing, ensuring that we are profitable, ensuring that, you know, we've got a black bottom line so that we can actually invest back into the education. Now that's about being responsible as a leadership team, you know. So I think
there's also the check and balance that you have to manage. Parents are more discerning than ever.
Absolutely.
And parents, being parents, you know, they're extremely particular. I mean, I went to one of your PTCs, or parent-teacher conferences. The kind of questions that they grill the teachers and the educators there, honestly, I mean, it puts a very interesting position that I've never found myself in. You know, when you think about PIBG, you know, some years back, my mother would have just given everything or the responsibility to the teachers. The teachers will just have to do everything, right? Including corporal punishment, where today it might not work, but when we were growing up, my mother just basically gave the teachers licenses, you know, beat this guy up.
Free hand.
Yeah, right?
No more. Let me just make clear.
2019 you know? Isn't like that any longer.
Yes.
And because of this discerning type of consumers that you have to manage, I guess this does provide a good check and balance to how you do your thing.
I think beyond that, we say that in education, therefore, if you provide quality education and you're, you know, partnering with parents, I think that's the word we like to use, that nowadays we talk about education as a partnership between the school and the parents. So there needs to be transparency. I mean, parents need to know what's going on in the school, how their child is developing to a much greater extent, as you say, than 20, 30 years ago. But to me, you know, that's the trial by fire. Like you provide environment, a service, an education that is top quality. That's good business. So to me, it's not, you know, it's not a paradox. You know, I mean, you provide quality, you will get the money. You know, I mean, you start compromising, as you talked about. You compromise, you cut corners. Now, that's the one sure way to, you know, run yourself out of business when it comes to education, especially in a world where, you know, the data and the transparency and the feedback is so freely available. You know, you can't hide that anymore. You know, so we talk about the TripAdvisor, you know, in terms of holidays and hotels and restaurants. I mean, education is close to that. I mean, your chat groups, your Facebook groups, you know, I mean, you can't hide the fact that you have weaknesses. So I think as private education providers, to me, it's a good thing. This transparency, because it means that we are accountable all the time, and not just to parents but to the students as well, you know, to ensure that they are having an enjoyable experience. So I mean, it makes my life difficult, that's for sure, but I think that's a good thing, because it ensures that the whole education industry, private education industry, has nowhere to hide. You know, we've got to provide those standards, and it's not static, because then every year we've got to keep up in terms of what are the new innovative practices, what are the best benchmarks, you know, and the benchmarks get raised every year. So as a consumer, as a parent myself, I think that's a wonderful thing. But also as a CEO in the education industry, I think that's a good thing for Malaysia as well, because let's talk about the macro picture, you know, it's not just Real and KDU, but I mean, we in Malaysia want to enhance our brand. So we always talk about the fact that, you know, countries like Singapore and of course the Western countries have got a head start on us in terms of an education brand, right? We want to make Malaysia an education hub. Then we as education providers, whether tertiary or K-12, private providers, need to very quickly wake up to the fact that therefore there's no place to hide. You know, I mean, we need to improve quality in order to make Malaysia a brand name.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
So we'll take a short break, but when we come back, we'll discuss a little bit more about the philosophy of Real Education Group, including that of Real Education per se, not the brand name, but the whole context of English of it, the real type of education that you can get. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Notepad. Today I am with Dr Goh Chee Leong, the CEO of Real Education Group, talking about education and more. Dr Goh, when we courted you for this interview, your people basically ran through with us some of the values that the company has, including what they call a 10 real world scenario. Before we jump to what the 10 real world things are, what's wrong with the current education? Is it fake?
Well, I think, look, a lot of comments have been made, and this is worldwide, by the way. I mean, worldwide, there's a debate raging about the nature of education and whether education is keeping in step, in speed with the changing world. So, of course, we talk about the 4R world, the VUCA world, right? Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And in terms of the business world, you know, we feel as though, well, businesses are moving very quickly. But then when we look at education, so whether it's university or school education, I mean, the general comment, I mean, as a psychologist, I spend a lot of time with people in HR, in MNCs, GLCs, leaderships, teams, and the common refrain, isn't it, is the fact that, oh, there's a bunch of graduates coming out nowadays, you know, they're not in step, they're not work ready, they don't have the, whether it's the thinking skills or the communication skills or the confidence or there's the common sense to be able to survive in the real world. And I think what we did, so our Real Education Group, this year has come together and really had a time of reflection about what we want in our schools. And so our new slogan, Real Education for the Real World, I think connects with that sentiment. You know, it's talking about, it's speaking to the angle that says maybe education has been a bit disconnected from the realities of the real world, you know. And what we are teaching in education may be out of step. And so the graduates we're producing may not really be work ready or world ready. So what we are looking at in terms of a new angle, a new gambit, is let's explore how to make education more relevant for the future.
Dr. Goh, I have to interject here because there are two things that I wish was taught when I was going to school. Number one, technical skills like filing for taxes, honestly. And I spent 4 years in university studying, you know, Bachelor of Accounting. So I was fortunate enough to not just be able to do taxes, but to learn the whole science behind it. My wife, however, she's a doctor, she's a psychiatrist, has no clue. And to think that a psychiatrist has no clue how to file taxes is unbelievable. But that is the situation that we have right now. So technical skills, number one. Number two, the soft skills of it. No such thing, well, at least when I was in school, that covered the issue of morality, ethics, transparency, how to handle difficult situations, compromising with other people, all these, I don't know how to put it, right? Just negotiating, right? And there's never a wrong answer, but there's never a clear answer as well. And you leave students, or for that matter, young adults trying to get into work, and they don't know how to handle these kind of conversations.
Absolutely. The ambiguity. I mean, in fact, I was going to say that your wife learned enough to marry you, you know, somebody who could do the taxes for her, you know. But I agree. So I think, look, there's been a shift, I mean, not just in the real group, but I think generally in education, an awareness that we need to move away from what we call content-based education, where the focus is a lot of knowledge, you know, memorize facts, memorize dates, memorize formulas, to moving towards skills. You know, and I think some of the things you've talked about fit into that category. So, I mean, we've come up with a list of 10 things. So, I mean, February this year, we spent a few days, a few weeks in a retreat to I think, reflect on, okay, what are the 10 skills or qualities that are really needed for this 4IR VUCA world. So maybe I can go through, because I mean, it talks to some of the points you raised. So one, we talked about adaptability and just innovation. The fact that in a VUCA world, you know, you need to be able to change and switch gears. I mean, the World Economic Forum has estimated that our children's generation, so Gen Z and younger, they are going to change industries 3 times in their life. We're not talking about companies or jobs, industries, because such is the pace of change, you know, driven by 4IR. So I think that adaptability, you know, which is not just learning skill sets, but therefore being able to have the contextual intelligence in any situation to be able to learn. So going back to your tax example, see, the solution is not so much to teach how the children, teach standard 2 kids how to file taxes, because by the time they graduate 8 years later, the tax system is going to be different. But it's more giving them the self-reliance and the resourcefulness to be able to say, in this situation, I need information that I don't have. How do I get the information quickly, and how do I quickly adapt to that environment?
To serve your requirements,
absolutely,
to serve your needs.
So whether it's tax or paying bills or whatever it is, I mean, when things change, which it will, then you're able to adapt with that. You know? So that's an example of a skill that we've identified and said that needs to flow in with everything we teach. So how we teach math and how we teach science and STEM and all of that, that needs to be built in. So moving away from formulas and spoon feeding, which everybody talks about, but nobody can, you know, find, I think, the political will and impetus to change that. But as parents, we need to drive that change to say, look, I don't want spoon feeding, because, you know, the more you spoon feed, then you don't pick up, you know, practical skills like that. So another one is, for example, we talk about synthesis and intellectual curiosity, which is one of my favorite words. I always find a way to build that into whatever I'm talking about, which is the idea that this intellectual curiosity is a natural ability to be curious, to be observant to the world around you, you know. And that's one of the traits that is lacking in employees. You know? So a lot of leaders talk about the fact that, okay, why aren't my employees observant about what's going on around them? Always need to be fed information by me. And that's because, I mean, they've not, in a sense, you know, kept this natural curiosity, which they have at birth, by the way, this brain that is absorbing information, that asks questions, that is naturally curious about their environment, their world, whether it's a business world, political world, whatever it is. So I think that's something that we should stop killing in school.
But the conversation happens at home, don't you think? I mean, my daughter was asking me the Plantagenets versus the Lancasters, and I said, okay, it's not just about that. You can argue the same thing, Daenerys Targaryen versus Cersei Lannister is the same thing.
Yes.
Honestly. So the conversation is on why there is a power struggle, why that somebody has to win, why somebody has to lose. What went into the conversation of who supports who. Those are not in the textbook.
Exactly.
So how do you encourage parents to actually have a conversation with their children on this matter?
No, and I think that's why earlier I talked about a good school has a partnership with parents. You know, one of the things we are doing in REAL is that we're going to have, you know, every month workshops, open conversations with parents so that they feel part of the education process. So one of the tips I'm going to be giving them is the fact that when your child asks a question, Never ever brush it aside.
Never.
So whether it's, why is the moon round? Why is
Yeah.
the
Why is the grass green?
Why is the
Honestly,
grass green?
I don't know how to answer that.
And we always tell parents, if you don't know the answer, which will be the case 80% of the time, then that's fine. I mean, you've got the internet now, but take your child's questions seriously and just say, look, give me 5 minutes, let's go and find out together. So as a parent, I'm not the know-it-all, but I want to facilitate that process. And more importantly, rather than feed my child information, teach my child where they can find that information. But by the way, this is the same dynamic in schools as well. So getting teachers to move away from, okay, I'm just going to give you the formula and the answer. Just memorize it, copy it down. To moving to a place where we talk about problem-based learning, which is something that in the real group we're going to go into a big way, from kindergarten all the way to schools, from spoon feeding to, let's talk about project-based, problem-based learning, where the kids are given a challenge. And the teachers then become a facilitator rather than I feed you information. So the kids will have to struggle. And I think that's the challenge, getting parents and teachers to say, allow space and time for your child to struggle. It's okay to struggle. It's okay not to get the answer perfect, but in the long term, what you're teaching them is the self-reliance that we're talking about.
Dr. Goh, I treat you as a patriot. You're
Sure.
a Malaysian. You've been in and out of the country. You had the option to stay away from the country, yet you came back. And not just that, you actually invested a lot of your time and work and perhaps much of your adult life in the process of educating Malaysia to a better destination. And the conversation that I want to have with you right now is, as a Malaysian, how do you translate what you're doing into the public domain so that every single Malaysian can actually enjoy the kind of virtues and benefits of private education?
No, I agree. I mean, the idea that I think private education, so the real group, the paramount education group, including KDU, look, we have got an open door policy when it comes to, I think, learning and policies. I mean, the revolution that is taking place in real is something that we want to share. So it's not a secret recipe we're going to lock away. So when we talk about digital education, and how we are using, iPads and partnering with Apple to bring technology into the classroom, hey, we want the public schools to come in, every week, every day, to come and see what we're doing, because we know they are on the same journey, and let's learn from one another. I mean, when we talk about entrepreneurial training, you mentioned, morality earlier on, and so we are embarking on an interesting, new journey of teaching children, rather than teaching them morals, but to teach them moral courage. So beyond, just prescribing what is right and wrong, teaching them to reason morally for themselves, and more importantly, teaching them to have the strength of conviction to be able to stand up for what they think is right. So all of these, consider these incubators and ideas and new platforms that in the real education group we are going to be unleashing on our schools. But like I say, we are an open window. So we want to invite schools from the neighborhood, from around Malaysia, to come and journey with us, partner with us, try out things with us, learn from what we are doing right and wrong. And I think that's the flow through, because the vision of Datuk Teo, the founder of Paramount and, of KDU, and now, the chairman of REAL as well, and myself and the team, is that we really want to see a wider impact on Malaysia. I mean, most of us grew up in the public education system. I'm an old MBS KL boy myself, And so I think we harken back to the days where we saw the quality and the high standards in education. And I think what we are doing now is, you could say, I mean, we are putting our money where our mouth is. So rather than be coffee shop critics, let's really invest in education. And I think private education is our way of saying, let's see what we can do in terms of creating new benchmarks and innovations and ideas that hopefully will have a ripple effect and will influence public education along the road. And I was going to say that some of the changes that you're seeing in public education, which I think are positive, things like getting rid of examinations in the first 3 years. Let's integrate technology into the classroom. These are things that you saw in private education for the past 12, 15 years, and I think, to me, that's the relationship. Private education, because we can be more agile, we can move faster, can be the incubators. We can be sort of the standard bearers
for
public education to then say, look, these are things that work, and especially in a Malaysian context, and then they can use this as research.
Dr. Goh, I think we have to end here. Thank you very much for spending your time with us. I've been speaking to Dr. Goh Chee Leong, the CEO of Real Education Group. Remember, if you want to catch this interview, if you missed it, just head on to astro.com, search for Notepad, or search for Real Education Group. That's it from me for this episode. Catch you next time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
you.